Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 173. Reading Again. Part 4. Sparks wrapped around my body as I felt the signs of a probability storm. This was a big burden for a single constellation not of the narrative grade to bear. I thought the records of how Cheok Jungyang faced an army alone were exaggerated. However, rather than an exaggeration, the stories had been reduced. In fact, Cheok Jungyang had become much stronger than what was written in Earth's records after becoming a constellation. In other words, there were sword masters who would become nervous just hearing about this constellation. Still, I had to endure it. If I couldn't withstand the spirit of Cheok Jungyang, I couldn't break the 100 days seal. Your status is currently sealed. Your main skills are currently sealed. Time remaining, 100 days. The 100 days seal, which could be carried out by the three highest beings of the constellation Hongik, was the highest grade seal that sealed up the target's abilities. Eat garlic and mugwort and endure for 100 days. Of course, this seal wasn't necessarily a bad thing. If I could eat garlic and mugwort for 100 days, I could receive Wanan's blessing and wake up the potential of my body. However, now I didn't have enough time. Han Suyang watched the garlic and mugwort pouring from the sky and asked, "Hey, isn't it almost done? The power is so strong that it is hard to control. Just wait." I took a deep breath and controlled my magic power. Cheok Jungyang lent me strength in response to my call, but didn't say anything in his true voice. He just handed me some of his strength, as if saying, "Try it if you are confident." As a result, I had been controlling the story that had been running wild for 30 minutes. It seemed like my whole body would burst. I watched the grumbling Han Suyang and suddenly became annoyed. "This is all because of you. This wouldn't have happened if you didn't use me as a shield. I didn't do it on purpose. Do you expect me to believe that? Based on what you have always done." It seemed like many complaints had piled up and I couldn't help nagging. How many minutes had passed? Han Suyang slowly got fed up and shouted, "Ah, I apologize. Yes, I used you as a shield. What do you want me to do?" I wanted to say she was brazen-faced, but then a presence suddenly intervened. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon interrupts with a cough. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon says that Han Suyang never used you as a shield. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon says your death is your responsibility. Han Suyang shouted, "Hey, you shut up and stay still." Saying unnecessary. What does he mean? It is nonsense. Don't worry about it. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon claims that Han Suyang didn't protect your heart to protect your Black Fire Dragon. My Black Fire Dragon? That's why Han Suyang hesitated before starting to talk. I mean, John Wuchi's attack flew to that place. Huh. I was so dumbfounded that I forgot the important situation and sighed. Han Suyang hesitated as she stared into my eyes and bit her lips. "That, you would be a bit unhappy if you lost that function, so." I shifted the direction. That's why it hit my heart. Well, there is such a story. It was an absurd story. Han Suyang didn't wait to see how I accepted it and added swiftly, I didn't have any strange thoughts. Don't be mistaken. The Black Flame Dragon bastard was shouting that I should protect the whale. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is looking at his constellation with embarrassment and agitation. I sighed lightly and said, "I don't care about that. Just protect my heart well next time." Han Suyang made a surprised look at my words and nodded. An awkward atmosphere briefly flowed. Han Suyang seriously considered something and opened her mouth. "By the way, Kim Dokja, I have a question." "What is it?" "Why does he call it the Black Flame Dragon?" "That guy, he was very small when he was a child. Lee Suk-young was immersed in her memories as she gazed at the dark and desolate plains of Dark Castle. How much time did it take to get here? There were no easy scenarios, and all plans were half distorted or broken. How many times had she experienced the crisis of death due to insufficient information? It was especially dangerous when I met Nirvana, the reincarnator. Lee Suk-young never thought that such a being could exist in the world. Well, it was abnormal for a novel to become reality in the first place. She turned around and saw Cho Young-ran, the incarnation of John Woo-chi. Your Majesty. Stop it with that title. Suk-young SSI. Cho Young-ran had a complicated gaze. It is no wonder, Lee Suk-young thought. Cho Young-ran was the only wanderer who knew all her circumstances. You didn't need to fight him. If you were honest about why you wrote the book. Being honest is harder than fighting. Especially when it is between a parent and child. In fact, she had the conversation with Kim Dokja because of Cho Young-ran's suggestion. Cho Young-ran kept pressing. Now is the age where he can accept the truth. He isn't the 10-year-old boy you knew. For me, he is just a child. It doesn't matter if he is 30 or 40 years old. It is the pride of a parent. Pride. That's right, it was pride. Lee Suk-young lowered her eyes. At first, I tried to show courage. I tried to tell the truth. However, after I looked into his eyes, it felt like an excuse for me to enter his life. Reality was different from a novel. A wounded person might be saved, but a wounded person wouldn't heal that easily. I don't know if that child really needs the truth. Maybe it was what I needed. I didn't want to stay as a bad mother. She became crooked herself to protect Kim Dokja. She became like this as a result of her own love. Incarnation, Kim Dokja will be killed by the person he loves most. Lee Suk-young recalled the moment when she first heard of her child's fate from Usanga. The fate of Olympus would surely be realized. The child will understand you one day. In order to find out how to save her son, Lee Suk-young gave 3 days and 3 nights to the founder's mother. 3 SSS-grade items were offered as a tribute to Hongik, and she also gave 20 years of her life. In return, she was able to steal a line of fate that Olympus had hidden. If he doesn't go to the next scenario, Incarnation Kim Dokja can live. Lee Suk-young smiled. Have all the troops gathered? Yes. They are all assembled. On the edge of the plains, the group of wanderers she led were gathered. They were all here because they believed in her. Lee Suk-young opened the main scenario window. Plus. Main scenario number 9, 73rd Demon King, category, main. Difficulty level, SS. Clear conditions, you are eligible to participate in the last scenario of Dark Castle. Gather 4 rankers to go up to the 3rd floor of Dark Castle and enter the final scenario. Time limit, 30 days. Compensation, 100,000 coin failure, death. Asterisk your current Dark Castle ranking is 2nd place. Asterisk only incarnations within the top 10 of the rankings can challenge the final scenario with you. Plus. Lee Suk-young glanced at Cho Young-ran. She currently had 2 of the top 10 rankers. They were Cho Young-ran and Lee Bok-soon. In order to complete the scenario and challenge the final floor of Dark Castle, 2 more rankers were needed. Cho Young-ran said, "They are coming." An army was pushing from the other side of the Abyss Plains. They came from Paradise. She saw a familiar face at the head of the army. Lee Suk-young greeted one of the people in the opposing force. Usanga SSI. It's been a while. Ah. Really, I'm really glad you are alive. Dokja SSI, we can talk about it later. Lee Suk-young looked at the party across from her. From left to right, it is Lee Hyun-sung, Shin Yu-sung, Young Hee-won, Lee Jae-hai, and Lee Gil-young. She heard about Lee Hyun-sung, Shin Yu-sung and Lee Jae-hai from Kim Dok-ja, but she had never heard of Lee Gil-young and Yoon Hee-won. Perhaps they were new people her son had recruited, regardless of the original novel. It would have been a lot easier if there were only original characters. Stupid fool. As a child, Kim Dok-ja did many unpredictable things. Therefore, Lee Suk-young had believed that her child would become an artist. The King of Wanderers. The voice came from the person she had been waiting for. It was a person she heard a lot about from her son while she was in prison. She never imagined she would see him in person. Yoo Jong-hyuk. Supreme King Yoo Jong-hyuk. The protagonist of this story opened his mouth. Why did you want to see me here? I have decided to end this scenario. Yoo Jong-hyuk glanced next to Lee Suk-young and asked, Are you also collecting the 4 heavenly kings? 4 heavenly kings? You need 4 rankers to go to the next scenario. Don't you know? Ah, yes, that's right. I'm collecting them. I guess they are called the 4 heavenly kings. I can't keep up with the trendy words of children these days. Yoo Jong-hyuk's eyebrows twitched at Lee Suk-young's words. You have a twisted mind. You are a shrewd child. The eyes of the two people met and waves of energy bounced wildly. Just by exchanging looks, Lee Suk-young could get a vague glimpse of Yoo Jong-hyuk's power. It was transcendent. He had to be at this level to be the protagonist of the story. Lee Suk-young took a short breath and opened her mouth. I want to hold hands with you. Let's gather the remaining rankers together. Rankers? Yes. Isn't your goal to save this world? You need the most powerful lineup of incarnations as possible if you want to clear the next scenario. I can help you. My sponsor is Founder's Mother. Yoo Jong-hyuk's eyes slightly tensed up at the words Founder's Mother. However, it was just for a moment. The words that came out from Yoo Jong-hyuk's mouth were completely unexpected. Where is Kim Dok-ja? Why are you looking for him? I heard you took him. So why? Lee Suk-young had a strange feeling at his dismissive attitude towards her suggestion. It was a disturbing feeling that only a mother with a child could detect. She wondered, surely you aren't going to include that child in your 4 heavenly kings? I'm not obliged to answer that. Your personality is exactly the same as what he said. Kim Dok-ja told you my story? He did. He told me a lot. She stared into Yoo Jong-hyuk's eyes, and Lee Suk-young's suspicions increased. Lee Suk-young asked, I heard that you handed the Paradise Achievement to my son. Why did you do that? He can save the world if he grows stronger. Aha, you are going to use him for that? Lee Suk-young deliberately emphasized a word. It was a relaxed tone, as if she already knew it. Then Yoo Jong-hyuk replied, Kim Dok-ja is necessary for this world. I need him. He will be my companion and he will see the end of the scenario. Lee Suk-young's expression slowly hardened. Companion? The voice of her young son appeared in her mind. That jerk, he is a complete psychopath. He knows nothing but how to use people. He will do whatever it takes to reach his goal. This is strange. The Yoo Jong-hyuk I heard about will never talk like you. Does your family like to talk as if they know someone well? Yoo Jong-hyuk pulled out his sword. It was a hard attitude that showed no more dialogue was needed. Give me Kim Dok-ja. Then I will spare you. Lee Suk-young stared into Yoo Jong-hyuk's blazing eyes and recalled her son's voice. Despite his many complaints, her son always looked somewhat excited. But the story won't continue without him. Ways of Survival is such a novel. At this moment, enlightenment filled Lee Suk-young's head. Incarnation, Kim Dok-ja will be killed by the person he loves most. Lee Suk-young realized the true meaning of this fate. She knew who would kill her beloved son. Maybe it was an insight Lee Suk-young was able to reach because she was used to these types of metaphors and symbolism. I see. Lee Suk-young realized everything and laughed. This wasn't her original plan. Still, the prophecy meant that the plan had to be modified here. I'm sorry, but I can't let you see my son. Why? A mother's responsibility is to control her child if he mixes in with bad people. Lee Suk-young's eyes were cold as she took out the 8-beaded bell. I have to send my son back to reality. Chapter 174. Reading again. Part 5. At this time, Bai-hyung was at the Seoul administrative branch of the bureau. It would soon be time for the Seoul Dome liberation scenario. All dakibis in the dome were busy trying to finish the scenario. Bai-hyung walked through the halls of the bureau and saw newly hired low-grade dakibis moving along with the instructor. Newly born dakibis. They received basic education at the branch's education center, were assigned their own channels, and were reborn as streamers. Don't hesitate to intervene if the interest of the constellations fall. You can't directly intervene in a given main scenario, so use sub-scenarios to aggravate the conflicts between people or create a dangerous situation. Don't create situations where the constellations are annoyed by character conflicts. A good person is a good person, a bad person is a bad person. Make sure the dichotomy is clear. This way, the constellations can easily determine the objects of their anger. Always induce the incarnation to be in the middle of the event. However, keep an eye on the main incarnation and make the event move around the incarnation. It also shouldn't give off an artificial feeling. The instructor spoke these words, and the low-grade dakibis were busy taking notes. At one time, Bai-hyung had been one of them. He learned how to proceed with the scenario and was taught how to smile and talk. It couldn't be too strange or too cliché. Become a streamer who wasn't disturbed by the scenario progression. Are you remembering the old days? Bai-hyung turned and saw the advanced Dakibi Baram, the chief of the Seoul branch. Bai-hyung was nervous and his expression changed. Baram stroked his beard and stared at the low-grade dakibis. It is a terrible sight. Every time it sounds refreshing to the constellations, but this is something learned from the dakibis' formal education. It is somewhat inappropriate for an advanced dakibi to say this. It is you who made the guidelines. Bai-hyung swallowed down these words. Baram laughed bitterly. It can't be helped. These scenarios sell well. There might be exceptions. There should be. However, that exception is possible because the ordinary scenarios are openly reviled. Some low-grade dakibis were gathered in front of the screens and watching the scenarios going on in Seoul Dome. On the screen, the stories of the incarnations belonging to the biggest channel in Seoul Dome were flowing. Bai-hyung's face became a bit hot. Then I will be forced to kill you. Yu Jong-hyuk SSI. No. Yu Jong-hyuk and Lee Suk-young were confronting each other on the second floor of Dark Castle. Damn, why isn't it coming out? It will come out. I just don't know when. On the other side, Kim Dokja and Han Soo-young were discussing an unknown story in the mechanical gateway array method. Bai-hyung was immersed in his thoughts. I warned him not to say information that would be filtered, damn it. The advanced Dakibi Baram opened his mouth. Your channel is popular these days. Talk of your channel is everywhere in the Seoul branch. In particular, that incarnation. I also receive a lot of curses. That's good enough. In any case, it is raising curiosity. Do you know that you are the #1 dakibi respected by the low-grade dakibis these days? I want to know why you called me here. It was language that could seem somewhat rude, but Bai-hyung had no other way. There would be a difficult situation if he didn't go back to his channel right now. Baram was silent and Bai-hyung once again spoke. I'm sorry, but it is entering the final phase of the 9th scenario. I have to go back to my channel. That's why I called you. Bai-hyung saw Baram's serious expression and realized something had gone wrong. There was a loud noise from the screen and the full-fledged battle began. The incarnations with strong sponsors were fighting, raising synchronization in a reckless manner. Signs of a probability storm appeared all over the place. If such strong signs continued, the outer gods would gain the right to intervene. If so, Kim Dokja's safety couldn't be guaranteed. I will be changing gods from another world to outer gods from now on, to match certain aspects that appear in later chapters. The anxious Baihyung tried to leave this place when Baram spoke in a cold voice. The constellations don't want your intervention. Currently, Baihyung's channel was the most influential one in Soldong. The fact that Baihyung was clearly being kept in the Soul branch made something obvious. Since when has the Soul branch been watching the constellations? I'm always watching. I don't just look at the education of the low-grade Dakibis. Isn't this what it looks like on the surface? The main scenario policy. A large number of nebulae have complaints about this scenario. A large number of nebulae. Baihyung knew who they were right away. Olympus. Vedas. Papyrus. The nebulae with influence in the star stream were interfering with the progress of this scenario. Why? In fact, Baihyung knew why. It is because of that incarnation. Kim Dokja didn't know anything and was still struggling against the mechanical gateway array method with Han Soo-young. At most, he is one incarnation. He can't influence the entire scenario, Baihyung refuted. Only one incarnation, do you really think so? No, he isn't an incarnation anymore. Before the 10th scenario arrived, an incarnation with no sponsor became a constellation. This was impossible, considering the difficulty of the scenario. He will be a monster. Have you forgotten about the Goryeo first sword incident? It is difficult to see such a non-standard existence again. Goryeo's first sword, Cheok Jungyong. The strongest on the Korean peninsula and among the upper-grade constellations, caused an incident. Baihyung also knew about what happened at the time. A person who incited many grudges, because his natural talent didn't fit the balance of the scenario. A great deal of probability was consumed to exclude him from the scenario, only for him to return as a constellation. Goryeo's first sword is a special case. Kim Dokja became a constellation faster than him, but Kim Dokja's potential itself isn't high. If it is potential, the incarnation Yu Jonghyuk has already reached transcendence. I know. That isn't too serious. In fact, Yu Jonghyuk is the one who is similar to Goryeo's first sword. That's why Kim Dokja is more dangerous. The frustrated Baihyung shouted, I can understand some of the complaints of the constellations. Kim Dokja didn't enter under them, so they are annoyed. However, isn't this a situation where they have already taken action? Have there ever been any cases where fate is used before the 10th scenario? You are defending the incarnation. It isn't defending. I'm talking about unfair treatment in the scenario. I don't think you are in a position to say that. Baihyung was surprised, but pretended to be calm. The advanced Dakibi Baram smiled. It's fine. I didn't call you here to catch your transgressions. It sounded like a threat where he intended to catch Baihyung's transgressions. Baihyung asked, then why? If you're smart, then you would know. Haven't you ever thought it was strange? Why are the constellations already using the excessive action that is fate? In most cases, they can peek at the future through their dealings with prophets who can use future sight, without using fate. If they anticipate how the target will behave, they can change the future with a moderate amount of probability. Yet they didn't do that this time. Why? It was something Baihyung had never thought about before. The power to force fate also placed a heavy burden on the nebulae. There were many powerful incarnations apart from Kim Dokja. Why force fate over Kim Dokja? Don't tell me. If the nebulae called for fate, it meant they had no choice but to use fate. In other words, The senior Dakibi Baram nodded. It means that no one in the star stream can see the future of constellation Kim Dokja. How can that be? I don't know either. One thing is for sure, many constellations are afraid that Kim Dokja will reach. It is still being filtered. So, it is all for the end. Baram's gaze was fixed on the screen. You need to do this. Once it is over, I will recommend you to be an advanced Dakibi. It required a screening process to become an advanced Dakibi. Bai Hyung already guessed what Baram would do. Bai Hyung watched the screen and unknowingly hugged the egg. Hey, do a good job. I know. Perhaps it was due to the former Black Flame Dragon incident, but the atmosphere with Han Soo-young had become a bit subtle. Han Soo-young's constant trying to start an argument was probably because she was aware of this awkwardness. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is smiling with satisfaction. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire hates this atmosphere. It took much longer than I thought to digest the power of Cheok Junyoung. 4 hours had already passed. I was sweating, just controlling the power of his story. My mother had probably met Yu Jong-hyuk by now. Han Soo-young was sitting on the floor eating mugwort. Then she said, "By the way, I don't think your mother is a bad person. Did your mind become strange after eating some grass? Well, the two of you seem to have a bad relationship. I don't intend to meddle with someone's family affairs. In any case, she is taking care of her child." How is this taking care? There are many parents in the world who have no interest in their children. Han Soo-young's voice took on a darker tone. I sighed and replied to her, "My mother spoke to me about you. She thought I was dating you." Han Soo-young laughed. Your mother has an eye for females. By the way, she thinks that Usenga SSI is better than you. So when are you going to kill that auntie? We laughed. Once again, I realized how certain Han Soo-young was. She was more like a character than anybody else these days. Han Soo-young stopped laughing. We sound like characters. It was as if she read my mind. My heart started pounding. Han Soo-young didn't know it, but one day, she would become a character. It was just like Lee Sung-kook and Young Min-seob. I liked both characters and non-characters, so I didn't know if it was a good or a bad thing. I felt unsure when I thought about that time. Why didn't I want this person to become a character? Something has changed? I looked down at my right hand after hearing Han Soo-young's words. The power of the story borrowed from Cheok Junyoung was finally stabilizing. I nodded. Be prepared. We are escaping. I controlled my strength and pulled out unbroken faith. The moment I borrowed Cheok Junyoung's story, the trajectory of his life passed through my head like a panorama. Cutting 1,000 people with one sword. Cutting a great mountain with one sword. Separating the sea with 3 swords. It was Cheok Junyoung's 3-sword style. It was the name given to a person who never swung a sword more than 3 times towards a target. The status you can't afford has fallen onto your right arm. 100 Days seal started to instantly crack. It was the splendor of Cheok Junyoung. The imperfect seal made with just the 8-beaded bell could never restrain Cheok Junyoung's power. A real 100 Days seal would only take effect after gathering all 3 heavenly treasures. The explosive flow of the story has distorted the space of the mechanical gateway array method. The explosive flow of the story has broken the 100 Days seal. I poured the white pure star energy into the air. One sword cuts thousands. Like a meteor shower, the sword cut through the air and the space split apart. The mechanical gateway array method and the seal. Everything was pointless before this overwhelming destruction. It was the sword technique of a genius training in the sword for tens of thousands of years. The most ideal cut for destruction. I couldn't see the true power, but I felt a sense of freedom that was just like when I reached 100 strength not long ago. This was the power of the stars. The illusionary space collapsed and reality started emerging. It was a completely crazy sword technique. I felt just as greedy as when I got curious electrification. How good would it be if I could make this mine? Unfortunately, bookmark only applied to characters. Due to your status increase, the bookmark skill will be updated. A new feature has been enabled. Your understanding of the constellation Goryo's first sword has increased by a very slight amount. Chapter 175. Reading again. Part 6. What? I was surprised to see the message. So far, my understanding of constellations had never increased. I opened bookmark, but Chiak Jungyang wasn't added to the list of available people. It might be due to the very slight increase. Perhaps it was a 1% increase. Still, I was full of expectations. If my understanding continued to rise, wouldn't it be possible to imitate the skills of the constellations one day? What is this? I turned at Han Suyung's voice. The white sky, the precursor of a storm, looking down at me with a disturbing aura. It was a white night. There were intermittent rumbling sounds, and the entire field shook like there was an earthquake. The aftermath of the two warlords colliding scattered all over the plains. However, they didn't kill each other. Everyone, kneel down. A constellation's true voice. I wondered how much probability was consumed to speak these words. Many incarnations who couldn't bear it were struggling in pain. Those who had the protection of their sponsors or those with strong mental powers didn't give in. Han Suyung was one of them. What? What is going on? Han Suyung shouted in a frustrated manner. I watched the field with her. In fact, I thought this might happen, but not to this extent. This is an utter mess. Do they intend to all die together? It wasn't just one or two incarnations who raised their synchronization rate to the limit. The probability allowed by Dark Castle was exhausted to the limit. Sparks appeared like firecrackers all over the battlefield. Kim Dokja, listen to me. If you do this, you will die. I heard Bai Hyung's voice coming from someone as I looked at the ruined battlefield. There is only one way to escape from fate. Find the force that will protect you. Otherwise. There was a sound and Bai Hyung's voice was cut off. Someone was blocking Bai Hyung. At the same time, hundreds of eyes focused on me. They were upper grade and some narrative grade constellations who maximized their synchronization with their incarnations. I felt the scorching air and gulped. Then Chiak Jungyang spoke for the first time. You must be scared. Nope. Rather, it is fun. I was serious. Many constellations are looking at you. Some constellations are chanting your name. 2,000 coins have been earned as a bonus. Chiak Jungyang spoke again, the wall of fate is high. It's just a high wall. I will break it if I have to. The person who I loved. Thus, the person who would kill me. I didn't know who they were. Just as I didn't know my own fate, they didn't know me either. Let's go. I ran through the battlefield. This time I didn't hide my power. I will choose the fifth bookmark, Kyrios Rodgrain. The moment that bookmark was activated, I triggered miniaturization and electrification. The technique of a returnee. How interesting. I was able to sweep through the battlefield with the power of Chiak Jungyang. However, I shouldn't overdo it. My right arm had almost turned into a rag after using one sword from the three-sword style. I ran through the battlefield while sprinkling the high-grade physique recovery potion that I had bought from the Dakibi bag. Out of the way. A white trail was left whenever I passed. This was the power of the returnee Kyrios. The power of the being who exceeded level 10 and gained the power of a constellation left white-blue trails as it passed through the battlefield. Aak. What the? Like a tsunami being split in two, the incarnations fighting each other screamed and scattered. I don't know what you're fighting for, but stop. It was good to raise the ranking to resolve the ninth scenario, but it wasn't good to consume each other in this way. T the ugliest king. I heard he was dead. There were incarnations who remembered me. If you know who I am, do you have a grasp of the situation? Some incarnations put down their weapons, while others fell back. There were those looking at me with shining eyes. Many incarnations are paying homage to you. Thank you for the 8th scenario. The rumor about your resurrection was real. There were those who remembered how I sacrificed myself when I was the strongest sacrifice. They lightly nodded and willingly withdrew. Your resurrection story is widespread. A new achievement, Mediating Messiah, has been added to your 5th story. I think they were the forces who came from paradise. Yu Jonghyuk and the party members were probably also included. Then the other side? Who? We meet again, young man. How did you get out of that array? As expected, they were the Wanderers. I asked Lee Bok-soon, why are you fighting? Why? It is because of you. Lee Bok-soon. She was the grandmother who had Harbin's sniper as a sponsor. You shouldn't go to the next scenario. Is that what my mother said? Lee Bok-soon rushed towards me without answering. The skill-old strength suddenly increased the grandmother's muscle strength, allowing her to push through the surrounding incarnations like a train, arriving by my side in an instant. Under the banner of the constellation Goryeo first sword, all stats will increase by 10 for 30 minutes. All of your stats have temporarily transcended human limits. I couldn't say that I respected the elderly, but some degree of politeness was required. Still, this time was an exception. I'm sorry, but I won't let you go this time, grandmother. The Harbin sniper was a sponsor that only showed a strong response to certain constellations. In other words, the current attack power was based on the power of the stories built up by Lee Bok-soon. If so, I wouldn't be pushed. Once all stats exceeded 100 in the electrification state, an enormous power emerged from my body. Lee Bok-soon was hit by my fist and flew away. Stop, Kim Dokja. The forces of the Wanderers surpassed my expectations. It was unbelievable that they had been defeated by Nirvana's Salvation Church with such a large force. By the way, there were some strange things among the Wanderers. They were contaminated humans who had been transformed into a demonic person. Unfortunately, I knew this story. Han Soo-young saw it and muttered, "Damn it, someone got the story of the 3rd place ranker." 3rd on the Dark Castle rankings, King of the Dead Davits. It seemed there was a person among the Wanderers who had killed Davits. King of the Dead was a story that was as powerful as Paradise of Despair. King of the Dead was a skill used to turn the dead into undead to fight. Get ready to run, Kim Dokja. Break through here. Han Soo-young created 10 or more avatars and untied the bandage around his right hand. Black ether focused in their hands, and black flames swept over the battlefield. I ran along the path Han Soo-young made. I overcame the group of demonic person and shook off the Wanderers. Then I saw Cho Young-ran using King of the Dead. As expected, this woman had the story. The first spiritualist of Joseon, she had the mechanical gateway array method and King of the Dead. My mother had a truly versatile subordinate. She was taking a magic power potion and looked surprised to see me. Kim Dokja? How did you? You were caught in the 8-beaded bell seal. I was a bit troubled. Cho Young-ran gathered her magic power. Maybe this person was currently 3rd on the Dark Castle rankings. Stop and back off. I don't want to hurt you. I can't. There was a sign she was using the mechanical gateway array method again, and I raised the energy I had kept hidden. Then Chiok Junyoung's strength was released. The constellation First Spiritualist of Joseon is greatly confused. The mechanical gateway array method was broken and blood flowed from Cho Younggran's mouth. Sparks flew behind her and a voice was heard. "This aura. Why are you here?" In the end, John Wuchi spoke in his true voice. Then Chiak Jungyang replied, "Get lost. But you aren't his sponsor. I won't tell you twice." Quack. John Wuchi was crushed by the strong difference in status and quickly disappeared. Cho Youngran was unable to cope with the aftermath of the probability consumption and staggered. She could no longer maintain King of the Dead and the balance of the battlefield started to collapse. "And no. You can't, Kim Dokja." I ignored Cho Youngran and ran. I wasn't afraid of any attacks pouring towards me because of Chiak Junyang. The difference in status was huge. After 5 minutes, the center of the battlefield was revealed. It was the place where the most powerful sparks were present. On the field where White Knight, the people I knew were pointing weapons at each other. Han Suyang ran up behind me and opened her mouth. "Your mother is a monster." I wasn't too surprised. My mother would surely be at this level. The information that I knew. My mother was fighting on an equal footing with Yu Zhonghyuk and my other colleagues. An incarnation who could fight evenly against a transcendent didn't exist. Behind my mother's back was the shadow of a giant bear. Poor descendants. I don't want to fight. I had seen Yamada no Orochi descend in the same form on Peaceland. It was the descent of the shadow of Founder's mother. Han Suyang shook her head as the nightmare of Peaceland came to life. How, wouldn't the probability be lacking? It is due to the 8-beaded bell. One of the 3 heavenly treasures shown in my mother's hand. The lack of probability was replaced by a powerful relic. If you don't want to fight, then why do you keep hitting us? Yua. The shadow of the giant bear swept through the field, causing Li Jiehai and Li Hyunsung to be thrown out. They couldn't stand properly against the destructive power. It was obviously a terrible situation. Dokja Sesai. Yu Sanga recognized me first. Then the other party members approached me. Yong Hee-won shouted first. "Dokja Sesai, talk to your mother." "Hyung, is that person really your mother?" "Yusung, Dokja Sesai, what is this situation?" The words poured out all at once and I couldn't answer. Finally, Yu Zhonghyuk approached me. "I guess your mother doesn't like me."